Tina. Hi. It's a real honour to be chairing this panel today with these 5 people, how many of us are there? 5, that I've had the privilege to get to know over the last year. We have Rhian Burke, who the Duke of Cambridge was mentioning earlier. She captured all of our hearts in the Mind Over Marathon documentary and ran the London Marathon. Sean Fletcher, who you will know from Countryfile and Good Morning Britain, who also ran the marathon to raise awareness of obsessive-compulsive disorder. Carl Hinnett. Carl, you've run how many marathons now?
154.
154. Carl was really terribly injured in Iraq and used marathons as a way to recover, which is interesting. And then we have Victoria Hornby, who is CEO of Mental Health Innovations. And last but not least, Simon Gunning, who is CEO of Calm. Before we get started, I just want to go slightly off script, not too off script, don't worry. I just want to say, you guys, I remember going to the launch of Heads Together back in May 2016, and I was quite ill when I went. And it took my breath away. It took my breath away to see 3 people of such influence talking about a subject like mental health, and just thinking how different things are going to be for my daughter's generation. And what you did was extraordinary. You took your voices and you allowed people that had voices but didn't feel they had the power to use them. Hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions. And I just wanted to say a massive thank you to you. I'm going to start with Rhian. You are such an incredible woman. I don't want to with tears. Can you tell us your story, please?
Many of you know the story, but back in 2012, my 1-year-old son, George, died very suddenly. And as a family, we received no support whatsoever. 5 days later, my husband, Paul, the most amazing father, most amazing husband, took his own life, traumatized by the loss of our son, leaving myself with my 2 children, Holly and Isaac, who were 3 and 2 at the time. And I suppose my passion for mental health started then. Obviously, to understand what was going through Paul's mind. I had no idea. He never spoke to me about it. Did he know? I suppose I will never know. But also the effect that the sudden bereavement had on myself and my children. I think crying and missing my boys was probably the easy part. Nobody came into our lives to offer me any sort of support. Nobody offered me an idea of how my mental health generally would be affected, the flashbacks, PTSD, anxiety, not wanting to leave the house, the anger. So I suppose that's where the passion for mental health has come from, and getting involved in the marathon last year quite literally changed my life. It really did.
Because I remember seeing you way in front of me.
I wasn't that far in front.
But I remember everyone was stopping you, and because the first documentary had gone out that week, and there was just this incredible atmosphere.
Yeah.
What was it like to go from this sort of, awful, tragic situation, but you took this negative and turned it into such a huge positive, but was it also quite overwhelming?
Oh, it was totally overwhelming. I suffered with anxiety, and I was going everywhere and people were mobbing us in the streets, but it was quite strange but incredible, because people were coming and saying just thank you for sharing our stories, myself and the other people on the programme who we remain very good friends. But it helped me because, to be honest, for the last 5-6 years, the anniversary's being this week actually, I'd spoken about missing them and the way my life had changed, but I had never told anybody until that programme, even my parents, how I was struggling with how much I hated myself and the self-worth I had and everything like that. So actually it helped me in a lot, knowing I'd helped myself, but I'd also helped, I hope, other people to have that conversation about their mental health.
And you just walked, was it 7 miles this week?
Yeah, myself and my children. George would have been 7 last week, so we walked 7 miles. the children raised over £1,000 for their little brother, and do you know what, it brought hundreds of people came and joined us just to remember them, but also to just get out there and appreciate life, because it is tough at times, but you must never give up hope, and you've just got to keep going.
And that was totally what the marathon was about.
And that is what it's about.
Sean, tell us your story. I have a feeling that, I'll let you tell it, but there was someone in this room who you told about your son's illness for the first time.
Yeah, I'd warn you that I get quite emotional. I've heard your story, Rhian, before, and I get quite emotional hearing that, and I probably will while I tell the story of my son. Yeah, he has obsessive compulsive disorder, which most people just assume is washing hands, perhaps excessively, so you rub the skin off your hands, keeping things in order. And it is that for some people, but it is so much more, as Bryony would tell you, and it was for my son. My son is 14 now. And obsessive compulsive disorder can be debilitating in the same way that an extreme physical disability can be. So he started to suffer from anxiety when he was at primary school, and then he gets bombarded with quite awful thoughts. And without going into OCD too much, what you have to do is perform compulsions to show that you don't agree with the thoughts. You know, think of your worst nightmare 24/7 while you're asleep, and your nightmares, when you're sleeping, but also in the day. And actually, it becomes so debilitating you can't leave the house. And so my son didn't go to school for a year. And the incident you're talking about was that actually one thing that I've noticed is there's a real parental stigma when your child has a mental health illness, because you're worried that your child will be labelled. That's really worried that my son would be labelled in the football team. He wasn't playing very well. I could see the OCD was affecting him, but I just wanted him to continue because he'd get over it. And I was really scared that the coach would drop him and then they'd label him as the guy who's got a bit of an odd condition. We were worried as parents. We were desperately worried that we'd be judged, that we'd be judged for both working, perhaps pushing him too much, perhaps even giving him faulty genes to give him this OCD. So, I was doing Good Morning Britain in an early breakfast show, and I was rushing home to try and look after him, and I was hoping to homeschool him, but I couldn't get him out of bed. I mean, it's just been a very, very difficult year, and it just dragged our whole family down. So this parental stigma prevented me really from saying it to anyone. And then the January last year at the Heads Together launch, I was just told, a bit like today, there's this launch thing, come along to it, and you can chat to some people. And I'm thinking Royals turn up. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's massive. But anyway, I had no idea I would be talking to anyone. I was chatting to anyone important. I was chatting to Sian Williams from Channel 5 News, who I know. And in television, if any of you work in television, you'll know, you go to these events and people talk to you, and then they look over your shoulder as if to say, there's someone more important over there. It's probably not just television. And she was doing that, and I thought, Sian, I know you. You're being really rude. You're looking at the person behind me. Well, of course, it turned out to be Prince William, standing right behind me. So I looked round, and he said, hello, Sean, how are you? And I thought, well, he knows my name. I haven't really prepped what I'm going to say or anything like that. And he said, why are you running the London Marathon? And I guess because I hadn't prepared it, my wife and I hadn't told anyone, apart from very close family members. I said, my son's got OCD. And it was a game changer for me, and it was a real game changer for my family that I just blurted out to someone who I'd never met, but I knew of course, that my son had OCD. And it just turned the tables, because it just felt immediately like a weight had been lifted off our shoulders. And I think that's one thing that people don't focus on much, that parents are struggling with their children who have mental health issues, and they keep it to themselves and they struggle alone. And so since then, a lot of parents have been in touch with me, and I've set up a few WhatsApp groups where we've all been sharing stories together. And it's a problem shared is a problem halved. And I mean, I would thank you for that, Prince William, to start with. I would never have done it unless I was forced to. And as a presenter, I tend to prep things, a lot of things, and I was completely caught unawares. And that, for me, in our mental health journey with our son, was a complete game changer.
And doing the marathon and being involved in Heads Together, for Ruben, what was that like? Because he's getting much better, isn't he?
So, of course, Bryony knows Ruben, because I knew Bryony before, and I actually bumped into Bryony on a television set, and she was talking about OCD, and this is when Ruben just started to show the signs of OCD. And I wasn't interviewing her, but I ran after her afterwards and sort of hugged her and said, I think my son's got OCD as well. And she gave me an even bigger hug. If you've ever met Bryony, you'll know it's a lovely hug. She gave me a big old hug and said, don't worry, you can get through this. Now, from when he was diagnosed with OCD, we had to wait 18 months for the right level of care and right level of treatment. And the thing with OCD is that it's completely treatable. There are lots of people out there with it at varying degrees and affecting them in different ways. And it's actually, with the right level of treatment, you can get over it, you can deal with it, like many of the mental health issues that we'll be talking about today. But it's just getting that level of treatment. And there was a stage where, during this 18 months, we were referred to the Maudsley Hospital. There's the National OCD Centre there. I mean, our family, we were on our knees. I mean, we weren't sleeping. Our son was dragging our family into all sorts of arguments. I mean, what the OCD was. It was killing us. It was just absolutely destroying us. We were crying all the time. I mean, it's really unpleasant seeing a young boy, and your young boy, struggling like that. And so we went to the Maudsley Hospital, and they said, we get it. We can treat it. We've seen this a lot, and it will be fine, which was the best news we'd heard in over a year. And then we heard the worst news, which was there was a 6 months waiting list. And I just didn't, I had no idea how we were going to get through that. That 6 months with no support at all. I mean, I just, imagine if he had a broken leg and you had to wait 18 months. I mean, that would just be unacceptable, wouldn't it? So he went actually into hospital because he got so bad. So he was in hospital for 6 months. And now we're having the right treatment. And your question was, I went off on a tangent there, but your question was about the marathon. And the London Marathon, which I had done before, I mean, it is one of the most incredible experiences ever anyway. But the Heads Together marathon last year, I can't really put it into words, but it was this whole, as I was saying with parents, you bring them together and they talk and they share experiences. And this was just a mass of that, people coming together and making the phrase mental health really normal and easy to talk about.
Carl, how was it for you? Because it was just another day for you doing the London Marathon, presumably. Because you also did Boston.
Yes.
And so, just quickly to talk through, you were very badly injured in Iraq, and you tell us your story.
So yeah, back in 2005, I was 18 years old when I was unfortunately injured. Luckily, I had the best care that I could ever ask for, but at the time, because it was a physical injury, I never asked about mental health care because it didn't cross my mind. It wasn't even an afterthought because I was so consumed on physical injury. And so I was given the best care and the greatest detailed advice on how best to recover. And then as time went on, mental health was sort of left in the background. But that's why I took up running, to sort of help act as though it was a therapy, just something to help focus. So when it came to running the mental health marathon, London last year, although having already run quite a few marathons in the past, to be able to be part of something where there was so much unity against the common goal, I was extremely honoured to be able to be a part of that movement, which has personally affected myself and my close family, and to see that other people were going through similar situations, and then being able to just open up and talk to complete strangers. It was such an important day for myself and for the runners and everyone involved.
And you were guiding a blind US veteran around, so you weren't just doing the marathon.
Well, that was a part of what our little challenge was, because I was guiding an American veteran, Ivan, who again had been in an incident where he lost his sight completely. So we was over in Boston to run the week before London to complete the Boston Marathon, because the American Friends of the Royal Foundation, very supportive of the Royal Foundation, so we was doing work over there to combat similar situations like what we're going through, to provide help over in America, and he came over to run the London Marathon. So us doing that as two nations was just a great example and a great opportunity to show our friendship and our support of each other. And to be able to run with Ivan, I have to be quite honest, even though he was completely blind, it was almost like he was leading me. He was such an amazing, strong and confident runner that it was just amazing to be a part of it, but it did make the whole week even more special.
Victoria, you were you've been with Heads Together from the very beginning. You were the Royal Foundation's Director of Programmes. Can you sort of talk us through, we don't have masses of time, but what it was, to see it go from an idea on the back of a fag packet through to this?
Yes, so after Prince Harry gave us his fag packet, we had to think through what could we do, and I think what we really wanted to do most of all, I think, was to change the language. Mental health, that it's hard to change the conversation if you don't change the language, and the language of mental health at the time was and has been for many years really a language of failure. You can't cope, you can't manage, you can't do things, and it puts such a terrible burden on people, creates that stigma both within yourselves but also elsewhere. And we really wanted to change that language about mental health, to make it a language of much more positive, much more accepting, but also a language that brought people in as opposed to push them away. And so I think that's probably where we would say we've had such a degree of success already. There is obviously much, much more to do, but that language is changing. And I think people now see challenges around mental health as just part of everyday life. It is inevitable if you think about life from 0 to 50 and all the challenges that people will inevitably go through in that time. That moving from childhood to adolescence, from adolescence to adulthood, parenthood, all of those challenges, it is inevitable that we will need some help. And that is where I think we've had the most impact is on changing that language.
And are you able to tell us anything about what you're working on at the moment?
So when as well as the campaign and changing the language, we wanted to make help more available where people are, and that's workplaces and schools and the military. But people are increasingly online, and that's where they're looking for their support. And we need to significantly increase the quality and the quantity of support that is available for people online. And we need to make that instant. We need to make it 24/7. People don't have their mental health crises during working hours. And we need to make it again something where the language is all about a positive reaching out for support, and that there is someone at the other end when you reach out for support. There will always be someone there.
Simon, working for CALM, the campaign against living miserably, what for you now, having seen the huge change in the last year, what for you now are the real challenges?
Continuing it, certainly. I think Heads Together brought so many things to all of the partners, and hopefully I'll speak for them who are all here, that it brought along a massive amount of legitimisation to the subject that we're trying to tackle. But a key part of it was that we were also encouraged, and especially CALM as a somewhat non-traditional and irreverent mental health charity, we're encouraged very much by the principals to retain that voice and to be able to focus on the key parts of society that need our help. So amongst the partners, we were all very much focused on different areas. It sort of makes me think a little bit of the Winter Olympics, and with the utmost respect in curling, and those people that go as the stone moves along the ice. But we spend all of our money on a helpline that helps people at the point of crisis where they really need that help, and that is indeed a symptom. To get upstream and to be able to campaign into those specific areas that the partners have, really needed those people with the brushes to smooth the ice and to get us in. And the instant legitimisation that we received to go into that conversation and to start talking about how that isn't a panacea. Opening up and talking doesn't solve everything, but whilst in our case, the thing that we focus on, which is male mental health and suicide amongst men, as the Duke put it at the start of the campaign, it remains a poisonous stain on our society, that it's the single largest killer of men. That legitimisation for the conversation gives us such a step forward, gives us such an ability to do good and to force or encourage societal change at its cause. Our challenge, Bryony, sorry, to answer your question, is to maintain that, and we're very fortunate that, for example, the Duke backed our Best Man project recently, where we tried to get men talking to each other as on a regular basis rather than just once in their entire lifetimes about how they're feeling. We did, of course, revert to talking about football, but nothing wrong with that. So we continue to try to do the same sort of work as a group of partners. So we meet once every 6 weeks or so and share notes. But if we can take that momentum, we can turn it into long-term actionable good, then we've received the most incredible boost that we could ever imagine.
It has been, even just personally, the last year was incredible. I'm 6 months sober now, which was something I wouldn't have discovered if I hadn't met loads of people in the mental health world and got involved in Heads Together in such a way. So I think, I want to say thank you to all of you. You're amazing. And another thank you to you guys. Thank you, principals. And to the newest principal to be. We're looking forward to working with you.